Well, actually, are they good in the IT room?
Is the vehicle clean?
No.
Already full of shit.
I'd like to call to order the Open Space, Land Acquisition, and Farmland Preservation Subcommittee regular meeting of Tuesday, the 26th of 2022 at 6 p.m. With that, can I have a motion for the approval of last meeting's minutes?
We get a motion to approve the March 22nd Open Space Land Acquisition and Farmland Preservation Committee.
I will second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you. Public comment. This is the portion of the meeting where we allow the public to come up for 2 minutes to the podium and state your name and address, and you'll be able to provide a comment or two if you like. Anybody from the general public? Sure.
I'm wearing a mask because I'm going on a trip, and I'll be darned if I'm going to get
Good for you.
a
Good for you.
negative or a positive test. I'm Alicia Cornelio. I have corresponded with this committee, and you've gotten some of my ideas, so I just would like to introduce myself.
And your address?
It's 327 Whitewood Drive, Rocky Hill.
Thank you.
So I understand that in the packet was some of my ideas and everything, so I just want to come up and introduce myself, and if you have any questions or, you want us to research any issues, we're more than happy to help you. Okay? Any questions or, no? Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we were planning on, the Garden Club has been involved several meetings along the way here, and we're not quite ready yet, but thank you. Sure.
Okay, my name is Justine Bedlack. I live on 7 Murphy Drive over at the other end of town, and my husband and I have walked through the property. And one thing that concerns me is there are signs posted all over the place saying pesticides in use, do not enter. And I want to know, what does that mean? And actually, we live closer to the property. So I want to know if a lot of pesticides are being used, what they are, when they're being used. So should we avoid the area at certain times? And is there anything I personally should be worried about? And that's my concern.
So public comment is where you get to say stuff. It's not a dialogue.
Oh, it's not. I just
So
get to say
your
it.
question is duly noted, and what we'll try to do is work it in once we
All
get
right.
past public comment. So please stick around.
All right, I will. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public wanting to make a general statement or add comments? Okay, and we have nobody in queue. So we will move on from public comment to the order of business is item 4, Town Farm Streska Land Use Plan Work Session with UConn's Landscape Architecture Team. And I think you're here. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, is it possible to work around the table like we did last time?
Sure,
Okay,
absolutely.
thank
Do you
you.
want to call a 2-minute recess?
So call a recess and, do I have a motion for,
The only thing I'm suggesting, we gotta drop the screen down again. I'm
Yes,
just saying, if you drop the screen down, we have
Yeah, we have the monitors there.
we're gonna see it here and the public's gonna see it there.
okay.
So
all
it's even better than last time.
right, okay, all right, good. Thank you.
Is it the same thing projecting on both sides?
Well, they can see it on their monitor, can't they? They don't have to go back there.
So he's got the pointer. I guess can you use the pointer on that monitor? We'll find out.
Yeah,
we'll find out.
Because we're not gonna be able to see what he's pointing at over there.
Ray, I'll be on this side. Oh, I see, I'll have access to that screen. Point on that screen, yeah.
But if he points, we won't see on here what he's pointing at, will we?
Unless he's got a
We'll
mouse
hear
that'll
it.
work on that thing.
We're trying to
We can
find
do it
out.
with a mouse. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if a mouse will work with that monitor or not. We're in the cutting edge here.
Exploring new ground.
Yep.
Mics are on, just a reminder.
Sure. Well, you gotta treat every mic like a hot mic.
Yes.
Well, the mouse just moved, so maybe that was a good indication that it's gonna work.
Yeah.
Go in the audience.
The icon just moved.
There's nothing on this side,
Let's see
right?
if we can get like an intermission thing.
So if I speak to the audience, that
Let's go out to the lobby.
I have to go to the podium, okay.
It's being recorded.
But you do see it on both sides. Oh, you get it on the monitors. They get it on the monitors.
All right.
They're fine. It's fine.
All right, we'll make it. Now,
Oh, yeah, he's got the pointer. The other corner.
okay. Now I have this one, thanks. I just have to find out how I can point.
Yep.
It's here, just
All
in
right,
case.
all right, okay.
In case you want.
The technology here.
All right, so Lee, you need to stay close by. Okay.
Yeah, I guess I can, I don't know if I want to talk to your.
Yeah, you have to go through the microphone.
Oh, sure, that's fine.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I think we're ready.
Just your name and where you're from and
Okay,
kick in.
yes. I'm Pete Minuti from the University of Connecticut, and Natalie Minuti Gray is also here from UConn as well. We missed last month's meeting because Natalie had COVID. She's doing better. I feel she's a little grumpier than before, Mr. Chairman.
Great.
Maybe you can help me with that. So what I'll do is we'll review our meeting we had 2 months ago in probably 3 or 4 minutes as a starting off point, and then get to the new information, which are 2 alternatives for the public agricultural parcel at the intersection of Route 60 and New Road, and also the first layout for the pathway, the public pathway to the south of the property. So we do have a lot of information. Again, this is a review of our last meeting 2 months ago, and we started with talking about the program. There were some changes to the program, revisions to the program we'll go over tonight. We talked about historical comparison between 1934, 1970, and 2020. We'll just touch on that. And then we looked at the homestead area and looked at the historic development of a homestead area both on this farm and in New England. With that being said, this is the overall parcel and the 3 zones. To the north, or the upper part of this plan, is the public agricultural uses, and that is the main emphasis of our program and our memo of understanding. And then we have the areas not colored, and that's the private farming activity. And generally, we aren't doing anything with the private farming activity. And then to the south, or the lower part of the plan, is the public hiking trails, and we do have some layouts for that. This is the wish list, a list of things that this committee and others gave to us. This has not changed from our last meeting 2 months ago. This is the program. This is what we heard you say. And the top priority we felt 2 months ago was the farmers market, but we were corrected to say that is not the top priority. So what I'll do is I'll go to the revised program, and I'll turn it over to Natalie to talk about this.
Okay, so what we heard you say in my meeting notes, and I'm going to get my old one too. Let me see if I can find it. So originally we said that the top priority was the farmers market. We changed that. We've now said that the top priority is the prefab barn for educational purposes and the community garden. And we're hoping that that's correct. In a centralized, highly visible location, that hasn't changed, with a strong sense of entry and park identity. the other thing that I changed is when we moved down to the second paragraph where we talk about the community garden, and we're still not really sure how many raised beds, 50 plus or minus raised beds for use by the general public, that there's still the potential for a pick your own strawberries farm, but I also added the chimney swift tower, thanks to Alicia, who mentioned that to us. I put that in as an idea. And maybe the beehive hosting, I know that's being investigated a little more research involved in that one, as things that are being envisioned as part of the program. Those are really the only changes that have been made to that. So we just need to know if we are correct in assuming that those are, in fact, the high priorities. Less commercial use, more emphasis on the educational purposes only in the barn, and also the community garden.
I think just to provide feedback, we should probably respond a little bit.
Okay.
Sandy?
I agree, and thank you for taking the farmer's market down a peg, because I know that came up last time, and I think it was misunderstood, as you're saying. So, yeah, I like this order of priorities. More accent on the public, the barn, the community garden, et cetera.
Okay, good. All right.
Ray?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that the educational component can't, it could be outside of the barn also, not just in the barn. So.
Is part of the community garden?
No. It'd be
No, okay.
The overall
Just
site.
overall?
Yeah.
Got it, okay.
Counselor Duff?
Yeah, I agree. Thank you for taking our feedback into account. One of the things that is called out here relates to the pick your own strawberry farm. That would really be not something, as I understand it, that the town specifically would run as part of the project, but it's potentially another piece of that very large parcel on the other side of the stream that perhaps another farmer may be interested in.
Okay.
So I don't know that we've really qualified the interest there, but that's something that it may be part of it or not. But as
Okay.
Ray mentioned, the kind of epicenter will be the barn that our grant, I think, specifically requires have an educational purpose. So if there's other plantings around that, that would be great.
Okay.
And then the other part, like you mentioned, the number of raised beds. I don't know we've account on that. Certainly, we've got a lot of land that we could expand. So I think what we're looking for something is that we could start with a certain size that we know people will use, and then scale up in the future if it seems like folks are more interested in that once we've also figured out how we get water and things like that over there as well.
Okay, well, one thing that Alicia did share with us was a case study that I've included in our presentation tonight, so we can look at that case study as well for the community gardens. Are you next?
Well, let's see if there's a.
Anything else?
Sure. So, Brian Clemens?
I had nothing at this time, but what you have here, I mean, you certainly listened to what we said last time, and I agree with Councilor Duff. The strawberry field is something that's not the town, that might be in the future, but yeah, it looks great so far.
Okay, great.
Fran Whalen?
No comments, other than looks good and you paid attention to us. Thank you.
Okay, all right, good.
Councilor Malaro?
I don't have any additional comments, thank you.
And I would just add that I think that, one of our main focuses is complying with our grant and getting our barn up.
Right.
And from that, things can offshoot, right?
Right.
The parking area and then the farmer's market. And we're going to, as Sandy say, we're going to build into this. So once that house comes down and we get the site leveled, we want to start walking, and the barn goes in, the parking lots go in, the raised beds start to happen. This could happen over
A long period of time.
2 years.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know, John, you had a little bit of vision of how that might work, knowing how all the different, different things work together on the site. It takes time. We can't get in there till after the house is demolished, so everything takes.
Yeah, I think priority right now is to get the land cleaned up.
Yep.
And the focus is on those contractors doing that work and so on, that hopefully will start in the next few weeks. And then from there, have some ideas what to move forward, but I think next after the land is cleared is the barn. And then we'll just have to figure out if we wanted to put the garden somewhere, what's a good starting point with some expansion, and then if there is a available space, maybe look into that leasing some land for the strawberries, but
Yeah, because we're kind of thinking this plan is going to help us order some of the sequences, you know, like what's going to come next type of thing. And we did have those foundations, those exposed foundations that Sandy and all of us were looking at, saying a couple of those could be turned into outdoor classroom spaces if we
Great.
preserve them properly.
Preserve them.
Or picnic areas.
And I would add that preserve some of the historic, because in your presentation initially, you talked about the history of farming in this area, and they are historic, either 100 years old or more, and beautifully done, and we could not replicate them, and it would cost too much money. So if we can preserve as much of that as we could, and build into it and work around it and make it attractive.
Yeah, because they're countersunk into the bank.
They're
And
built
they're
in the
facing
bank, and they're
out.
8 feet at
and
the bottom.
They're facing back
Big
into
grade
the
change.
farming, so it looks great.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. No,
Facing
they're
south.
beautiful.
To the farm, yep.
Yeah, okay.
Just
Yeah.
a note on that, on the walls, all 21 demolition contractors are all aware of the Sandy Kelly patios that we have out there with their natural walls. So we should be safe.
Did they sign off on that?
They will.
Immortalized in fieldstone, Sandy. Good.
Anything else? Is that
So
it?
that would be it from us.
That's it?
Thank you.
Okay.
Actually, sorry,
we-
I did have a note. Yeah, just that I just want to make sure that we were a little clear on. So when we're talking about community gardens, I think our vision was working with the garden club or other organizations to have folks who would, own their own bed or work it with another group, however that works. So it's a public space in terms of open to the public, but it's not necessarily a public space where I think that everybody can, go in and pick somebody else's tomatoes. So I think there's going to be some delineation of that community garden space for people to work from the educational space.
Okay.
So I'm not sure how, because I think we were also talking about how do we site the barn, what do we put around it. We've got the great ideas about using some of the foundations, but I think it would be interesting to see if we had plantings of an educational interest, if they were native plants. I mean, you don't want to bring in too many invasives, not talking about going full-blown arboretum, but something of an educational or planting nature around the site itself. Because we don't want folks walking through and thinking that the community gardens are pick your own, because then we're going to lose, a lot of interest from that, people putting in the hard work.
Yeah, the gardening club has given us a full set of documents on how to operate a community garden. So with leases and
Great.
I came complete with a whole bunch of materials for us. So
Great.
I think we're in good shape when we get to that point. It's just that there's two types of gardening, right? Vegetable and flowers. So I imagine
Yeah.
there'll be comments how we set that up.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. The next document you see is the program matrix that I made, and we've changed a couple things in that. We got rid of in the program matrix description, we got rid of the small amphitheater, took that out. The shade shelter pavilion, we took that out, so there's no built structure anymore of that. So if you look at the color graph that you see, the theater, pavilion, and play columns have been taken out. So all the columns that are left are the ones that we still feel are the important program elements for wayfinding, circulation, and the major uses of the.
Ray, do you, Ray?
Yeah, you still have lawn play area in there too. That needs to come out.
The lawn play area, so do we interpret that as just being an open area, not necessarily structured as a play area, but just an open area that they could just run around on? Maybe the language isn't right, or should it just go completely?
Well, just from my perspective, I think it should go completely, because
Okay.
we don't want to promote kids running around, because there's going to be
Okay,
parking lot, there's going to be other
got it.
farm equipment coming in and out, so that, it's not a play area, it's an educational, active
Okay, so that would
farming
be,
activity.
we'll just get rid of it. Okay, got it.
All right. And one more, oh, no, I'm going the wrong way. That'd be great. Go.
And this is something that I put together based on what Alicia had sent us on the case studies that she had of Weathersfield Community Gardens, Cromwell Community Gardens, and then a column that I added for your community gardens. So if you look through the information, starting with the manager of the community gardens, I didn't put anything in, well, I did put town manager in there, but that could be, at first I thought, I'm not really sure if that's gonna be the same.
Gotta go.
Right? We know now that's going to go. Okay.
It's just a draft.
So look through that column and see if there's anything else in there that you would like to change. The location is mentioned. I know there may be some new names that we'll use when we refer to the location. The acres, Peter, you were saying, what you see tonight for the design of the community garden's a little bit smaller use of acreage than what I put in there, but there are 5. Size of plots to be determined, number of plots to be determined, fee to be determined. I think I remember you saying raised beds in one of our meetings. That may not still be the case, but I put that in there. The season, I use the same seasons that the other 2 towns are using, but that could change. I use the same startup information. Water excess, I know you told me you're using town water, so I am assuming that's still the plan. Composting, none of the other towns is using that, but I put to be determined. Pesticides, to be determined, and then planting vegetables and annuals, no perennials. Now, again, that can all change as well, and then everything else after that is all to be determined. Whether you had any structures, meaning fences, any kind of structure, not necessarily a building, but a fence structure. The beehive hosting and talking to Alicia about that, there needs to be some additional research about whether or not that's even something that we can still seriously consider with the use of pesticides. Yes.
Sandy?
I don't know, could I ask a question at this point?
Sure.
Or make
Sure.
a comment?
Yep.
On the plantings, we have been having a lot of discussions in town among
Planters.
the planters, the green people, I don't know, about pollinators and pollinator pathways.
Yes.
And whereas here you have no perennials, it seems to me we want to think about some perennials.
Okay,
And we want
got
to
it.
think about pollinator perennials.
Yeah, that was in,
Be the demonstration gardens.
yeah, that was in your notes. I didn't mention that in there. Pollinator pathway, and so those are the perennials. Got it.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So we're kind of getting a little bit towards, because the earlier question from the public about pesticides and fertilizers, right?
Yes.
So we have a working farm section, and those farmers, we do have a representative from that group on this commission, Fran Whalen, and he could speak to it a little bit more, but the farmers have leases, and they do use the appropriate and approved pesticides and fertilizers. One is fully organic, the other 2 are not, and Fran, jump in, but we don't see changing the farmers who are commercially farming this. On our piece that you're working on, we would absolutely want to know who's putting what in the ground, and on the, we're actually covering up
In the community garden.
arsenic, naturally occurring arsenic, and making it
Right.
suitable for us to go on.
Right.
Partly probably why we don't want a playground set up right on there, right? We want a parking lot, and we want some, we have to get some coverage over that.
Right.
Make sense?
Yeah. Yep.
Fran?
Yep.
It does. The farmer's area that's being leased right now is the farmer's area. It's not going to be open for the public to walk through there. Pesticides and fertilizers are all used per DEP's regulations and guidelines. But that is not a public area for walking, as we know.
Okay.
The southern part,
Not for public. Got it.
or the northern part around the homestead is going to be the public area for interest and activities.
So Fran, when
Okay.
do fertilizers go down?
May through June is fertilizing time.
And some have more smell than others,
Correct.
but that doesn't indicate the level of toxicity.
No, it doesn't. It depends what type of fertilizer it is that's being used. A manure type's obviously going to smell more than a commercial type of fertilizer. And they're incorporated into the ground and all regulated and properly done.
And usually it rains, and that knocks the smell down. If it doesn't rain,
Correct.
it hangs around for about a week.
Could be a few days anyhow.
Yep. And then pesticides, when do those get put down?
Pesticides are put down whenever an eruption of some type of insect occurs. The sweet corn up there would probably be every 10 days, some type of pesticide to control the worm population in the corn, sweet corn. But that's, again, it's all regulated by DEP. They have strict guidelines when stuff can be used. It's got to be documented and regulated with them. And these are commercial farmers that are selling their crops, so they obviously don't want to exceed anything that's going to be hazardous to anybody's health.
Right.
But they do have to control whatever pests are there so that they have a marketable crop.
Okay.
And those dissipate with time and weather conditions as well. So usually when you put it down for a week or 10 days, you know, but nobody should be walking in the commercial part of the farm anyways. That is a forbidden zone to hikers or walkers. Councilman Malaro?
Yeah, poses a question around when these are presented, the timing that you've mentioned, is there a certain distance that folks need to stay away from, like a boundary or
About 15 feet from the boundary line where it's being put down. And it's gonna be put down without winds, because the winds obviously would carry it further. So most time spraying's done is early morning. There's very limited winds usually, and it's not gonna be sprayed on a wet, windy, rainy day either, so.
No, appreciate that. And I'm thinking that's probably part of the schematic of the distance between anything that we're doing or designing to the, and also any communications I think would need to be possibly implemented into that plan.
Yeah, so there is signage on the site right now about spraying. And we have the large ravine brook that runs through it that is probably from each bank side to each bank side, a good 15 feet. So you've got your barrier from the commercial farming built in with the natural landscape. So we think we're good with regards to the general public.
But I just want to reemphasize, it's sort of a construction site in sense, that it's not, we're not promoting activities of walking through there, because there aren't any really established trails, because it's been cleaned up and it's uneven and so on. So we don't recommend people going through it. And again, as Fran said, we leasing this property to the farmers, and they have a profit motive, and they're doing what they should. It's just like down in the meadows, people shouldn't be walking through the farmlands in the meadows, and the same here at Strathcona Farm, people shouldn't be walking through there. And then the signs are just notification that it's being used. Maybe it should say keep out pesticide. Also, pesticides are being used, but
Right,
at
well,
this
that was
point in
my next
time,
question to Ray. Do we have no
Ray.
trespassing signs up?
Yeah, we didn't put up no trespassing signs. We originally wanted to put up keep out,
Yep.
and then that changed from notification that pesticides are in use for some, I don't know how that changed, but we were told to put up those signs instead.
But in terms of, and it wouldn't surprise me if something like that was regulated. You have to provide notification. I wouldn't surprise me if that was.
I
one of the
think we
reasons
went
for it.
through Steve Sopolak.
In terms of,
You did, yeah.
Yeah.
And Jim saw me at the time.
Yep.
and in terms of the pesticides, I mean, I wouldn't expect that there would be risk to, there's a question from a neighborhood. Like, it doesn't, because of how you're putting them down, it wouldn't be a floating cloud that would roll through the neighborhood. It would be early in the morning, and it would be like a touch thing. After, like, you wouldn't want to touch the pesticide with your bare skin, right? That's kind of what the risk would be, or is it, you should avoid it because you don't want to breathe it in after a period of time? I mean,
Both to some degree. I mean, you don't want to be, right in that field when something's being sprayed, because, they want to intake that. But it does cling to the plants is what the pesticide does. And once it clings to the plant, it reacts, or the insect, whatever you're spraying for, it acts that way.
I would think the biggest risk, to the extent that there is one, is probably to the person who's out there applying it out in the field, right? And then it goes down after.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right.
Okay, Chair? All right, so we'll move on.
Just one last thing. Anything that you'd like me to change in that case study, let me know. In those columns where it said to be determined, for the next meeting.
Yeah, I think we would just want to not be as prescriptive. Maybe the garden club, people want to plant perennials because they want to, I don't know, plant whatever. I mean, unless they've got a restriction against it. I don't know that as a committee, we want to be telling people what to plant in their beds.
Okay.
Okay, so back to the content, and this is the content of our meeting 2 months ago. We just went over the program, both the revised and the original program. Good conversation about pesticide, herbicide use. And now we're just going to move on to the historic comparison. And again, I won't go into detail for the second time, but I just wanted us to remember that we talked about the idea of, how the farm has been used historically, and we can compare aerials from 34, 70, and 20. And it's very consistent with how the farm has been used and very consistent with how farms in New England are set up. And there were 4 major observations that our team from Yukon made. One was the homestead was always organized by the street geometry at the corner of the 2 public streets. So the stone walls, the foundations we've been talking about, the existing house, they're all parallel and perpendicular to the public roads. Number 2, the farm fields are primarily organized by the street geometry, with New Road becoming more dominant as the land moves south. So if you just look at the graphic off to the right here, the dashed yellow lines, for the most part, are hedgerows and stone walls and planting. And the geometry changes with 160 being dominant to the north, but as we move further to the south, things become parallel and perpendicular to New Road. It's just good to understand the vernacular and the geometry so we are consistent with that. We can contrast with it. We don't want to be slaves to it, but we want to understand it. We don't want people to show up at this piece of land and say, where is this place? It has a history to it, and we want to respect that history. Number 3, the topography imposes itself on the farm layout at the lower elevations. So the stream that we have that more or less separates the public areas to the north, to the true farm activities to the south, that is bisected by a stream, and that stream has been there for probably it's been there for probably 1,000 years. But it's been documented for hundreds of years. And the reason why it's there is because there's a drumlin, we call or drumloidal form right here. And this is the shape of the edge of the drumlin, and that's why the stream is hugging the lower part of that drumlin. So it's the geology from the glacier that came through that is making the wetlands where they are, high points where they are. So again, we want to respect that. And fourthly, vegetation is a combination of formal rows. So there's a lot of formality in how farmers do their planting, as well as organic shapes when we get to steep slopes and when we get to wetlands. So kind of nature takes over there. And we spent a fair amount of time walking the land to the south. And, we know why it's forest now. So this area of all this green here is forest. And it's forest because primarily that's wetland, steep slopes and wetland. So it's hard to farm steep slopes and wetland. So those are the first lands that go to forest or are never cleared. If they're cleared for the timber. So it's kind of like when it's really tough to plow or really steep for pasture, farmers stayed away from it. So there's a story to be told, and we feel we're sensitive enough to understand the story. All right, and then we went into how farmsteads are put together, prototypical farmsteads, and we saw that the farmstead here is very consistent with farmsteads all around New England. Basically clustered buildings stretching east to west to capture the southern exposure for the kind of the more open areas of the house, and then the northern exposure having less windows on the north. So you use your house as well as hedgerows for a windbreak. So it's very, very consistent with how this land has been developed and what we'd expect to see. And then going into the farm fields and the geometry of the farm fields and the relationship of the farm fields to the homestead. So that was kind of the history that we went through last time, something that we're very, very interested in, passionate about. We then moved on to the this upper parcel of land. We moved on to an inventory. I'm just showing here, this is the elevation map. The deepest blue are the wetlands, to the highest ochre colors, the highest part of that land. So we can kind of see how along 160 is the high point, or a ridge, if you will, and then it drops down into the wetlands here. And this is, again, the drumlin that I'm pointing to now, and that's why the wetlands are on the bottom side of that drumlin. So a way of understanding what we have. So that's a recap of our last presentation 2 months ago. Now we're going to the new presentation, and the scope of the work we're going to show you. 2 alternatives for the northern parcel. Alternative 1 is we're calling the Great Lawn Scheme, and the alternative 2, the Homestead Scheme. The names could be very fluid, but we have alternative 1 and alternative 2. And then we also have some hiking trail layouts to the south of the property. And I think the conversation about pesticides and the public really comes to a head on this area. Not so much in the higher use area where the barn's going to be, because we have the natural separation of the wetland between the real farm and the educational aspects. But the trails, that's going to be a little more difficult to get that dimension, because right now, the easiest places to walk on the southern aspect of the land is adjacent to the fields, because they're relatively flat, they're cleared, there's no wetlands. As soon as you get into the forest, you're getting into steep slopes and wetlands. So it's kind of like, where do we want it as an option? Where do we want it? It's a decision that needs to be made. It's not going to be easy getting let's just say a dimension of 25 or 35 feet, for instance. The trails from all the farmland, that is not going to be easy to do. So it's something, we don't have to solve it tonight, but we can identify the issue. All right, so I'm very excited about this work we're going to show you. This is, again, just an overview, and the area we're going to talk about now is the public agricultural uses up here. So we're going to focus on this for probably the majority of the meeting. Excuse me. And the first document I'm going to show you is a site analysis. And here is the site analysis. So right here is Route 160 with my cursor, and this is New Road here. This is the existing stream here with the wetland over here, just for orientation. So what we're saying here is that, and we can follow along on the right-hand side where I'm saying site opportunities. So we're saying there are site opportunities, things that are good, that we want to enhance, and there are site constraints, things that are bad that we want to mitigate. So going site opportunities, we have outlined an area which is the architectural heritage of the site, which is the homestead. So that is this zone here. That is the zone that has the majority of the foundations. It has the existing house, the homestead now. But this is the area that we have most of the artifacts of the historic use of the land and the structures. Number 2, we're saying that the view shed from this intersection is a key view shed, that when people are stopped at that stop sign there, we want to have a view, a vista or view of the homestead and of the piece of property so people understand what's happening there. So that's element or opportunity 2. Number 3, vehicular, we want the primary vehicular access from New Road because there are less traffic there. It'd be the safest place for that. although there may be necessary to have either farm access or emergency access from Route 160. And then number 4, varied topography with high and low points makes for a very dramatic and interesting site. So the idea of, I'm coming here now showing the high point in this red dot. This is off of the area that we're planning, which is north of this line, but it could be a great place for maybe some birdhouses or something that has the high point there that has a strong visual significance to it. And then this is very tightly tied to the low point. So, whenever on a site you have a high point and low point very close to each other, it offers a lot of dramatic experiences on the site. And then we have the agricultural and wetland soils, which are of real value. We know agricultural soils are special, primary agricultural soils are special, and wetland soils are special because of the biodiversity that it attracts with the flora and the fauna. So those are some of the opportunities. Some of the constraints is we have contaminated soils, and it's not real easy to see this, but there's a color here. It's off tan color. I'm just following the soils with arsenic. That's where they are.
Oh, yeah.
And there's also some over here. We know Route 160 is heavily traveled. And there's also here, even though these are not arsenic soils, based on the soil engineer, there are a lot of concrete and bricks and building debris, and we'd call these urban soils. So there's some limitations to urban soils. Not the pollutants, but mechanically, there's some limitations to those soils. So this also is what we heard you say, along with our kind of professional reading of the site. And this is meant to say, have we heard you right again as far as this graphic is concerned? So this was kind of like the beginning, saying, okay, here are the good things, here are the bad things. Now we're going to base our first layout on this value judgment that we've put before you.
Sure. Sandy, any comments to this so far? Direction?
No, and I know this is all proposed, whatever. The emergency access on 160.
Right.
That really has to be discussed, right?
Yeah, possibly emergency access, but no way should it be farm access
Right.
for the farmers. I mean, that's too dangerous. So maybe if you just left it, if you deleted access and/or farm equipment,
Yeah,
remove
sure.
that.
You have that?
That's my take.
Yeah, okay.
Chris?
I was going to say the farm equipment, it would get in off of roads, right? Is that where it's coming in now? So
Right.
it probably we already have a means to do that, I think. And yeah, go ahead.
Am I hearing you right, Chris? So farm equipment from 160, is that what you're saying too, or not from?
No farm equipment.
No farm equipment on 160, got it.
Right.
Okay.
They already have an access point.
Separate access.
Yeah.
Okay, yep.
Okay.
And I think if we were going to look at Parks and Rec or whomever else bringing in mowers, they could probably use the one off of New Road, I would think.
Brian Clemens?
Yeah, just to go back to the farm equipment, but if as mentioned in that, the stretch of land here, agricultural soils on 160, a
Yes.
possible strawberry or pick your own
Gonna need access.
area, that's what we're talking about, right? Was that pick your own area?
Yeah, that elongated
So
stretch.
they would need to get farm equipment up there.
True.
Yeah, it wouldn't be
across
from,
the river or the stream there.
Yeah, there's a road across the stream.
but the access wouldn't be, it's down below 160. And they can still get in, we'd have to design a way to get in. I mean, that's
Yeah.
all, we just have to plan for it.
Yep.
It's the safest way,
Yeah,
getting-
160 is just too fast.
Yeah.
Too busy,
Yeah.
too fast. And we don't, we want to track mud out on there and everything else. And even from a safety point of view, I think the only comment I would make is that we want to remove ourselves from at least, 10 or 15 feet from 160 before we have anything that could have somebody standing around or sitting around.
Yes.
So, Brian?
That's all I had, just
Yeah.
on that one area.
Brian?
I think there should be two entrances here for safety, public safety reasons. One off of 160. If that is gonna be farmed up in that area, the farmers would have to get off of 160 onto that property. Otherwise, coming for where the farmers are now, there is a gate, but you're gonna be going through all the public access areas to get to that little chunk of land to be used.
Mr. Chairman, would it be possible to continue my presentation? Because I think there will be some additional information that will shed some light on some of these observations we have. And I would also say that we don't view anything we're doing right now as binding. This is master planning. We're kind of flushing out the ideas.
Sure. We just thought you wanted some comments on
Yeah.
this section. And just, Councilor Malaro?
I have no other.
Okay.
Okay, all right, beautiful. All right, so that was the site analysis. I keep going backwards here. And now we're going to look at the first scheme. And the way I've organized these is this first scheme has 5, or actually 6 different, what I call overlays. So there's a lot of information to go into this master plan, so we just kind of have different systems being shown. So here we can see the 2 public roads in the pink color. And then this one, we have what I would consider the main access in this kind of arc shape right here. Coming off of New Road would be the primary entry, and whether or not people access onto 160 is to be determined. Whether it's just emergency or not is up for discussion. Right now, this showing the barn in this location right here, and parking between the proposed barn and Route 160. So we can kind of use the parking as a somewhat of a separator between the dangers of 160 and other uses. So it's kind of like there's cars on 160 and then there's parking, which are also cars adjacent to 160. The X that I'm showing on here is the location of the existing house. So we're, I would say, substantially to the south of the existing house, and also slipping a little bit to the west of the existing house. In this layout, the secondary road is this dashed here. So this is coming behind the barn. Again, this would be parking in this area. Right now, I have about 10 spaces. We could wrap this parking around. It could end up being 20, 25, 30 spaces by wrapping it in this way. And then this road comes down to this location, and this road is an existing farm road. So we're gonna, we're proposing to reutilize or utilize the existing farm road. Coming back over to New Road, this is a small parking area here, and a potential gate here, and a potential gate here, and a potential gate here. And again, this is all proposal to generate conversation. The thin red lines are pathways, so pedestrian pathways. So the idea here, potentially, is that maybe the rest of the site could be closed down, the gate could be closed, people could drive in, park here to access the pedestrian walkways, trails. This gate, say these gates are open, these gates could be closed if it's only for emergency access, so when people come in, they would come here, and then they would come into the parking lot. Potential gates here to say, well, maybe we want only open to the barn, open at a certain time, and we don't want people to go further into that. Then this road comes down, as I pointed out, comes across this way. There's existing access here onto 60, so it's picking up that. Again, that could have a gate to it. So this is primarily showing vehicular and pedestrian access. the location of the barn. This is showing improved stone walls. The existing stone walls there now, not in great shape, so these could be existing stone walls. And this is, again, a master plan is a long-term plan. This is showing potentially a little hut for selling tomatoes, or it could just be a symbolic kind of entry or gateway to the site. It could be just a really nice sign, something to mark the site from New Road. This wiggly line is the existing stream, and that more or less stays where it is. So that's layer one. I'm calling this the organization of key elements. The next overlay, wrong way. The next overlay is showing important view sheds. So here we have like 4 key view sheds. And this is the view shed from the intersection, showing the view across the farm, both the parcel to the north and all the way to the high point. I mean, it could be a very spectacular view with some selective clearing. We have a second view shed from the entry on New Road. So when people come, either drive by or stop or pause looking for it, they have a direct view of the barn there. So they can see their destination. They know they're in the right place. And then we have 2 other view sheds from the south facade of the barn looking across the field, and from 160 looking to the barn, and from the barn looking out across that way. So we're really trying to have a very organized series of views by carving the vegetation. There's a lot more vegetation in this part of the site than there historically has been there. A lot of kind of volunteer weed type trees. So we feel that some of those could be cleared to really give people some really nice sight lines around the farm. That's part 2. Part 3 is fields and gardens. So this is saying, okay, what are we going to do on the ground plane here? So I have a legend to the left-hand side. So right now, the kind of the great lawn, or the idea of the most public open space is in this corner. And that would continue down to the wetlands here. So we just see this as public access, not growing vegetables in there because a lot of this is arsenic soil. We then have the community gardens in this location, which have bookends of wetlands on one side and arsenic soil on the other side. So this ends up being about 1.5 acres here. We have other potential farm fields in this location that I'm pointing to here and here. This is some arsenic soil and also some vegetation. And then these kind of 4 roundish blue-green areas are either all wetlands, true wetlands, or arsenic soils. And we feel that these wetlands have been kind of abused over the years on farmland. And it's a great opportunity to have kind of cutting-edge riparian buffers, rain gardens, retention and detention basins to clean the water and to be an educational aspect of this. So I think with the arsenic, we're doing 2 things. We can show how there may be some phytoremediation in these areas, as well as controlling the runoff. So it seems like, and that's where we say it's a real opportunity having the wetland soils and the wetlands, because the flora and fauna attracted there are very different from other places. So it's really a cool opportunity. When I walk down there, there's a lot of nesting birds down there, even in the state it's in, which is definitely, you know, there's not a lot of buffer area to this, but you know, the ducks are still down there doing their thing. So that's what this is showing. The next one is I'm layering in the trees. So these are a lot of existing trees with some proposed trees, but the first cut at having vegetation, but we know we don't want a lot of trees. We're trying to grow crops. We need the sun, and we also want the vistas. So they kind of work hand in hand. Vistas, view sheds, and we don't want trees where we want to grow crops. And then this is the overall, all the systems together, showing the circulation systems, the fields, uses, the rain gardens, public spaces. And I kind of view this as, there was a lot of conversation earlier tonight, the idea of public-public and kind of private-private. So the public-public is where all people are welcome all the time. And then private in a lot of ways are the actual true farmland, that only the farmers are out there. And then there's a gradation between all those. So that's the intent of this plan, is that if these are the community gardens, and it makes some sense, they could go here as well. It's good soil. But if these are community gardens, there's methods in this plan where there could be gateways and ways to stop people from all the time having access to the community gardens. So that's that, and then this is the overall plan and just beginning to put some acreage to it, the existing conditions. So right now, this piece of land here, which continues further to the right here, I just cut it off because I was focusing on this parcel. And I know there's some discussion that this might be strawberry fields. That's about 2.5 acres existing. This area here works out to 1.5 acres. This area between the arsenic and the wetlands and the stream is about 1.5 acres. This lawn area, which could be meadow, growing hay or something like that. It could be something more refined than that. This is about 1.5 acres. This corner is about 1/2 acre. This curb cut is about 250 lineal feet from the intersection, as this one is. And I know, Ray, I've heard you mention that there's a kind of a plan that shows using the existing farm road into the proposed barn location, and that is somewhere where my arrow is now. It's probably about 100, 125 feet from the intersection, and I think the feeling was that's a little bit close. So this one drops it down to about 250 feet in this layout. This loop, this pedestrian loop here, so if you walked around this loop, that's 1,000 lineal feet. And then this loop is about 2,000 lineal feet. So a lot of times people are really into exercising. They want to know how far it is because they want to know how many times they have to go around it. So I think both of these would be extremely interesting places to walk. And I know we have trails on the other side, but I know there was a committee member or two that said, I always thought there would be trails on this piece too. That wasn't my understanding, but when I heard that, I said, why not? So that's what we laid in a couple of these potential trails. So this is one idea. The second one is similar. It's similar because there are a lot of things we can't change. Right? We can't change where the good ag farm soils are. We can't change where the wetlands are. We can't change where the arsenic is. We can mitigate the arsenic some. We can move the bad stuff. We can cap it. But generally, a lot of these things are in place. And what Natalie and I did is we just tried to shoehorn all your uses in the most appropriate places to put them. So, obviously, we could change a lot of things, but a lot of things just, they are what they are. So that's the Great Lawn Scheme. And then
Before you go on from the Great Lawn Scheme, I'm just asking staff, or John and Ray, what you think of this first option so far. Your basic observation.
My first reaction is how do the farmers get to the fields?
To their fields over here?
Yeah.
I assumed they weren't coming through this parcel.
They are coming through this parcel.
No, aren't they coming through roads?
We've been going through roads way up there. We haven't gone through this parcel at all.
So
Get
Fran,
there
that gate,
currently.
So that gate is, we don't need the gate?
the gate is just there to symbolic
It was an old
dividing
farm
line. You
road.
guys don't open and close it to
No,
use use
correct.
roads.
Yeah, just because it was the old farm road that,
But yet Collins has no access? They don't access their fields from New Road?
no.
With the chair.
He could with that old farm road that's currently there, but he's not using it.
That's good.
Currently.
All right. It's a lot of activity.
Yeah, and I think
That's-
this is really nice, and I really appreciate the walking trails on this parcel. I don't know, Sandy, what you think?
I just had,
Oh, yeah, John?
is there any reason why you set the barn up where you did? Is that the land is good for the barn?
Yeah, a few different reasons. Again, historically, that's where the foundations are, so we felt we could kind of dovetail some of the foundations and the new construction together, so they would have the historic connection to it. And also, we try not to put the building in the middle of the site, because then all four sides have to be the front of the building. Where if we push this up a little bit toward 160, we would view the north of this building as kind of the service part of the building. So you only go back there if you're welcome back there, and then out front is kind of safer. So right now, the way it's laid out, aside from this entry road, if people, for instance, kids or students or whomever, got dropped off and came in here, they would have all this access without crossing any roads. So we're just trying to zone it the best way possible. Usually we take a building and not put it in the middle. In some ways, it would be like taking you guys and putting you in the middle of this room. There'd be some people looking at the back of your heads and things like that. So that's why we just kind of pushed it up a little bit. Historic site, and we wanted it to be a little bit along an edge. What do you think?
I think there's like too much roads going around. My thoughts when I saw it is a more direct road that as you enter in from New Road,
Yeah.
you sort of connect with that long arrow road with it, and you sort of cut out the roads there, and then the parking lot would be below the barn, switching that so that you come in and you have more land to expand for parking for the so-called gardens, and maybe eliminate the entrance on New Britain Avenue near the stoplight. And so I guess what I'm saying, a more straight line from New Road all the way over to the end of the dotted line arrow.
We have that.
And then you have that, the only entrance or emergency, or if they do go into Strawberry, that could be opened up seasonal, would be that one entrance farther down on New Britain Avenue. But I just thought there seemed to be a lot of traffic to get to the parking lot, but if you somehow put the parking lot below the barn and then maybe make it a more direct, straight line for the road that you come in off a New Road to go into the farming areas of the gardens.
Yeah, so, yeah, it's
I just,
our other scheme is similar to that, so we can look at that.
the point that I also was making is if you drop it down and expand the parking, then it's use more convenient for the public gardens and the people that want to use the green space there, and then so on, and on both sides of the barn. So the barn is sort of the central point, but I think if you could move it up a bit, drop the parking down, expand the parking, and then have that road don't make like a J. It just goes straight in and hook up with this dotted line that goes straight through most of the property.
Yep.
And-
Yeah, we,
And then
that's a
maybe
good
move the
idea.
public gardens so that it's sort of perpendicular to New Britain Avenue.
So I think what, John, that would accomplish, which is the one feature that I think we have to address, is the public garden, the community garden area. People are going to be carrying gear and supplies and
Right.
produce back and forth or whatever. And maybe this road layout doesn't quite facilitate letting folks tend to their leased space.
Right.
But to argue against staff's comment there a little bit is I totally get the vista coming in from that corner.
Right.
And you want to keep that open. It's a great look.
Right.
And we also want the Kohanik barn to have the same vista going out to the field.
Right.
That's the learning amphitheater, if you will.
Right.
So I wouldn't want to break up the sight lines. I totally agree with getting out the exit out here.
I'm just saying, I think there's too much roads,
Too much road, yeah.
and we can go directly in there, and then you can expand the
A little
parking
more
lots.
direct, yep.
Push it down closer to the public garden area.
Chris?
I would just say, I think some of these items, when it comes to how far they're setting in, where the parking's oriented, how many spaces we need, where the curb cuts are probably going to be P and Z items. So, there's some of that is actually prescriptive according to our regs. So maybe we endorse a principle and then we pass it over to the other folks to fine tune it. I don't know that we want to get too lost in those types of details. Because they could change a lot. If they say, actually, you need X amount of space to have the parking for the barn. Because if we're looking at the community gardens, other than maybe in the spring, if a lot of people are getting their stuff in, I don't know how many people are going to be there on a regular basis, all trying to park at once. And, I don't think we want to build a huge lot to support that.
Yeah, typically with the community gardens, so this plan views this road, this would be used by the community gardeners.
So they could parallel park.
They would parallel park right along the road. So instead of having a lot of paved area, impervious area, we would see really limiting the number of impervious spaces and then having informal parallel parking with a good sub-base, so even in the wet season, people would not get stuck. So that's how we saw that playing out, that people want to drive they want to drive right to their bed. You can't get close enough. You want to throw things off of the out the door into your bed. So, I drive a car. I enjoy driving, go cross country, but I just don't want the parking lots to dominate the site. So whenever we can tuck them away, let's tuck them away. Also,
Well, and before you go,
Yeah.
just so I try to give everybody.
oh yeah, okay, all right,
we
all
took
right.
the- Sandy?
You addressed what I was going to ask about. I wasn't aware that we were paving, and maybe this will come up, but how much impervious surface are we going to have? Are we going to have the option of any pervious surface? Can we consider pavers in points? I know it's more expensive, but it's so much better for the land in areas where there's going to be paving. And I hadn't even thought of paving anything in here, but I guess that we might need that. We might need an apron on each end of the barn
Well,
or
why not a
something.
gravel, the pea stone gravel, and
Yeah,
that's
but
it.
That's to be discussed, but I want to broach that at some
Right.
point.
Yep.
So, from our perspective, we would want to help you limit the amount of impervious pavement. Probably need some for ADA and things like that, but the way this is being set up, it would definitely be limiting the amount of impervious pavement. One thing we try to keep into concern is how police will patrol this place. So they don't want to get caught in a one-way system either. So right now, the police could come in from New Road and potentially come up and out there. So that's an easy, safe swing for them. They could also come this way, this way, this way, and then get out here. So I think the idea of limited, I think we all understand some limited access in 160 is necessary for safety. So it's just a matter of what you guys feel comfortable doing, the number of people. But when I think about this, or even a school bus, for us to put a full turnaround for a school bus in here, it's huge. It would ruin the scale of everything we're showing here. So I know I don't want to speak out of school. I can speak to transportation engineers.
Great points, great
Yeah.
points. Yeah.
But the idea of, even if it's right turn only, if a school bus came in here, they can drop off, come here, right turn only, and get out, and that way they're not turning around and doing U-turns within the site. So it's all to be discussed.
So I'll let Brian Clemens have a comment, or?
The community garden area, 1.5 acres, approximately how many plots, so you think would be able to fit in that area?
Yeah, for the 1.5, if you look at the case study,
Peter,
Cromwell
Peter,
has 1 to 2
if
acres.
you get up to the
and
mic.
they have-
Lee, come up to the
Oh,
mic.
sorry. So just looking at Alicia's case study, and I saw that Cromwell had between 1 and 2 acres, and they can fit, if this is correct, yes, 50 10 by 15 plots.
Oh, okay.
So that's a lot. And then Weathersfield has 2 acres, and they have 70 20 by 30. I don't know how they do that, but they have 70
very efficient.
20 by 30 plots.
And the 1.25 acre area right above that can potentially
Yes.
Be added.
expanded.
Yes,
to
yes,
if
yes, yes.
the need is there.
Yep.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Fran, Whalen?
I just have to agree with our town manager about maybe the entrance from New Road, just go straight across to your dotted lines and put the parking for the barn to the south of the barn. There's a lot of movement there the way it is, and I think we only need one entrance or exit on 160. Would get rid of the 2. Just my thought. And also, your dotted line goes, where does that end, your arrow?
This one here?
Correct, where does that end?
The existing road now, Farm Road, goes to the end of the property to the east, and then it swings up and hooks on to 160. So when you look at this, historically, there's probably 7 or 8 locations where they've been accessed from this property to 160. Obviously, that's extreme, but there is one all the way down to the east. This road turns up and intersects with 160.
What are you proposing for there? You just have an arrow going nowhere, is it turnaround?
Yeah, our proposal would be to utilize that road for the use of this both the community gardens as well as this parcel, and whether or not it hooks up to 160 or not really is a decision to be determined based on this committee, engineers, experts.
Okay, thank you.
Fran, that's Phase 20, Area 15.
Thank you. Right,
Dollar value, $5 million.
very good.
Councilor Malaro?
Yeah. Okay, so, can we move on, Mr. Chair? All right. So, excellent points. This is Homestead Scheme 2. Look at that.
Perfect.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Straight road.
Yeah, you should have stopped us a long time ago. That's right.
I did ask the chair if I could continue the presentation.
If I had only known.
So, typically, there are, the way this works, people like certain things on one, certain things on another. We put them together and come back with 2 or 3 alternatives based on the commentary. So this one is bringing that road straight through. The barn's actually in the same location. It could slip a little bit to the south. And a lot of the layout is very similar. The X is, again, where the existing house is. And the Y is one of the plans that Ray provided me showing where the barn potentially could be. So this location is kind of like in between those 2 areas. So that's key features. These are the view sheds, and I think the view sheds are really key. The view sheds work pretty much the same way. These are the fields and streams, fields, streams, and gardens. And really the big difference is on the first one, we kind of take this view shed from this corner into the farm field, and the ground plane is a mirror of that view shed. With this one, there's different activities. We can still have that view, but there's different activities on the ground. And it just feels more like farm fields, rectilinear farm fields. So to me, when we think about a lot of public parks now, everyone has a great lawn in their public parks. People love going out there and hanging out on this piece of open space. They like the view. They want their own little space for a picnic. So that's part of the reason why that was shown, where this is more kind of in the geometry and the flavor of the farmstead. This to the west, all this is the same. This is showing, well, actually, if I go back one, this is has the same idea that you can come in. There could be gates here, could be a small parking area, and this has the single path coming around like that, and then going along that way. So that's that small parking area. This is the parking area behind the barn. And I will say there's plenty of room to do everything that you've asked us to put in here. There's more room than we need to fit things on here. The third one is showing the planting. Same kind of concept with the wetlands and the riparian buffer. Circulation is a little more straightforward. And then a lot of the acreage is the same to the east. This little parcel here, that 0.5 acres, has to be more ceremonial and symbolic, because a fair amount of this has arsenic, not all of it, but some of it has. Snuck in this piece of land, which is not arsenic. That could be, you could grow crops there. And there's also a little piece down here that could potentially be used or for planting. Everything else is about the same. And then that's it.
If I could stop you, just and just with staff's help, for public that was here concerned about pesticides and chemicals, the arsenic is largely natural occurring arsenic in this geography, and is not, and can be easily covered with a foot of, when we level out the site, so it's not, it'll be safe for people to walk on or stand on or congregate on. And there was only a little bit of chemical seepage from the chemical storage shed. Ray, if you could back that up.
Yeah, the arsenic, you're right. Most of it is naturally occurring. It's been there for, forever. The areas that Zuvik is looking at, actually Thursday, they're going back out to further identify and hone in on those areas that they need to remediate. Some of it's got to come out, some of it's, and then we're going to cover it. So it's going to be a combination of removal, I believe, and additional base, sub-base, and topsoil, particularly for the parking areas.
Yep, and that's included in what's going to happen with the house from a demolition point of view
No.
with the grant, no?
No, the grant covers 2 phases. Phase 1 is a demolition and abatement of the house and all of the structures, which will happen in May. Phase 2 is the soil remediation, which is the big ticket item, which is around $600,000 worth of work to do. And that is the treating and remediating the arsenic and other contaminants that they may find, and also site grading and engineering for the barn and the parking areas for
Right.
the barn.
But Phase 1 and Phase 2 are all covered under that state grant.
All covered under the $837,000 grant.
837,000 grant that's coming in. It's not town money, so we're in really good shape to address the naturally occurring arsenic.
Right, excellent. Ray, when, Phase 2, when would that begin?
Well, my predictions have been a bit off. You know, it is a state process,
Right,
prevailing wage and CHRO and all that, but we're hoping we can probably start that beginning, middle June to somewhere in July, hopefully,
right,
to start. Because we have to wait for the abatement for the house and whatever they're going to do around the house to clean up additional stuff that's there now. But we're hoping to start Phase 2 in mid-June.
right.
Is that a separate RFP, or do we have to go out
Oh,
for
no,
that?
separate RFP, absolutely.
So are we on track to have that issued for, or do we need to know that is there a date that we need that would prevent us from going out to RFP for that remediation?
We need to have Zurich complete their remediation testing and then put together the technical scope.
Okay, so,
Does have
and
to
they're
go
on
to the
track to do
state?
that.
And then all that has to be referred to the state again for review. and
Two
approval.
agencies?
CHRO and DECD, Department of Economic and Community Development, and Commission on Human Rights and Opportunities.
I'm actually just going to take a quick second to ask if I could get when you're finished presenting, Pete, we'll get a motion maybe to add to the agenda public comment again, right after this, all right?
Yep.
And then we'll amend it, and then that will give us an opportunity for, to let public come to the podium for 2 minutes each after seeing your wonderful plans.
Yep.
Which they didn't have the benefit of earlier. So we're just going to give 2 public comment sections.
And just a question, are we expecting, or to set the right expectation, is that just to have folks to give their thoughts, or are we going to engage in a back and forth? Because I think it might be a different motion if we're going to talk.
Yeah, no, just public
Let's get it.
comment. Let them get up and give their comment. We've got another meeting or 2 to go, and yeah,
Sure.
not debate, not discussion, but comment. So we'll let you
Okay.
continue. Thank
So,
you.
Mr. Chair, I think there's an opportunity to coordinate this plan with the soil engineer's abatement plan. So when we spoke on the phone, it's probably about 2 months ago now, they seem very, very open to working together and to understand the proposal of this plan and how that would impact the grading. So there was a lot of kind of techniques discussed on how you can bury some of the soil, you can cut and fill and move it around. So it seems to me one of the advantages of this plan is it is a 20-year plan, but at least you know every move you make, you're going in the right direction. Because I'm sure if they did their grading plan and it was counted to some of these moves, it'd be like a $300,000, $400,000 ticket to get back to this. I think it could be coordinated. That would be
Right, yeah.
my hope.
That is what we're looking for in
Yeah.
doing this. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
good,
Great.
beautiful. Okay, so now we can go very quickly to the path layout, if you would like.
Please.
Okay, all right, so this, we'll get right to the meat of it. The assumption is this. The assumption is this is the path system we would recommend to limit the amount of grading and limit boardwalks or anything like that. The path of least resistance would have a path system similar to what I'm showing here. And what it shows is 3 potential trailheads, 2 along New Road, a potential sidewalk or trail along New Road. Ray, we had mentioned, or you had mentioned the last meeting, I think it's a 15-foot swath of land between the pavement and the fence. And depending on who controls that land, there's plenty of space there to have a sidewalk or a trail or something if that's desired. That's what this is showing. But this is showing a path, I'm just going to trace it here, coming up here. And this is right along the edge of the field. In here, it's away from the edge of the tilled soil. The tilled soil is
Like Gilbert?
up like this, so this is not right along the edge. Potentially looping around here and back there. So that's potential loop. A second loop would be coming over here, and Fran, you had mentioned that people now are walking along this, it feels like a dike here, elevated farm road, so people could come in here, walk around in this direction. Is a field that's pioneer species are growing up, filling in this field here, coming down here and coming back. And then there's a kind of a rough connecting walkway path, farm way between these two. So that's the path of least resistance. We know the key here is we have people close to the farm fields. I'm just going to go to the next slide. And this is showing a series of photographs of views from the trail and views of the trail if we follow this proposal or this idea.
So, question, V7, View 7, that
Yes.
field, Fran, is that being farmed?
Where is that?
Is that Lisa's?
Where is?
Yes,
It's all the way at the very top of the,
It's the corner there.
by the yellow or green circle.
No, that's the land I'm using. I'm using V8, 9, and V7. Those
So f-
fields coming off of
Oh,
roads.
because that road, that trail goes right between your fields. That's probably the closest somebody is to chemicals, and you're the organic farmer, so the only thing you have to worry about is smell.
But it is a problem because the farmers are leasing that area, and that's restricted to public entrance.
yeah, Mr. Chairman, yeah, just to note that yellow trail,
Yep.
View 8, I think what we talked about 2 months ago was the tree line across, you have to move that south. And I think Fran was mentioning there's an area of a tree line across at the bottom that people can use, not through the middle of his
Hugging that
cornfield.
boundary,
Yeah.
the property boundary.
That's correct.
Closer to the homes.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah,
Peter.
Right.
right there, because
That's where-
otherwise you're walking right through the middle of the cornfield.
And that's Rhodes Way entrance?
Yeah.
So there is a concern in the general public about parking up there. I don't know how that will shake out for us or whatever, but there is a concern about parking, whereas a New Road, we have no concerns for parking slots along New Road.
Right.
Those other entrances, so, but yeah, this is great. I don't know, any other comments or questions?
I
Well,
just
I
think
don't think the
number,
farmers will like this at all. I don't- At all. My thoughts, Fran,
Yes.
V3, that middle yellow one,
Yep.
that's all wooded there now, so supposedly you could always
Right.
make parking. But if you did the V3 up to 4, then hook up to the white trail,
Mhm.
and then took a right on V6, and then hooked up to that dotted line,
property line.
and come back down to do one path to get you back to New Road on the border path. That way it takes out all the trails that are associated with the farm. You're pretty much on the border, plus you're in a lot of wooded areas, so you're away from the green bean
Yep.
fields. And then you got your line towards Rhodes, which is that tree path that you mentioned that I would assume would be away from your farming area. That wouldn't be much of a concern, but I think a lot of the other stuff is interfering too much with the farmers'
No,
land.
that's a great point. We want to keep, we don't want to give anybody the chance to meander into the,
Farming.
Right,
off the trail immediately into farm.
right, yep,
That farm, that V8 like you have, that's the whole access for all three farmers to get into the property.
right,
They all come off of roads, they go up V8, and then they go to their areas.
right,
My thought was, come off of roads, come a little south, like the town manager says, that dotted line along the property line.
sure.
There's an area there, it would have to be improved, because there's some trees there that would have to
It's a
be.
little low and wet, but not that difficult,
No,
yeah.
that's a possibility if you want to have trails from there, because then it's south of the fields I use, and it's not interfering with any other farmers out there as well.
Right,
It's a thought.
yep,
But that V8, that V8 is the entrance for, the access for all the farmers, and the machinery's going through there, and it could be, dangerous for people to be walking up there as well.
sure,
And it's not open to the public, really, with our leases.
right. Yeah, my feeling is with this, local knowledge is key on where these fields, where these trails want to be. Mr. Chair, if you guys want to sketch it out, send it back to us, and we'll plot it the way you feel it should go. That would be fine,
Good, we'll do that, I think.
yeah.
Yeah, great.
Peter?
Yes.
So you laid out these trails to least resistance?
Yes.
What does that mean?
Okay, I was just gonna say that. I was just gonna say that. Explain why, because the slope in the woods.
Right,
And the
so-
wetlands.
Just, I guess, my preconceived idea or thought is, I have my arrow here down to the south, would be, there's a stream in here, so the feeling was, hopefully the trail could be further inland, so we'd have that separation between the trail and the farm fields. The way this is naturally occurring, it's flat right to the edge. So if we look at view one, here's Natalie walking on that grass strip. So that's a easy place to put a trail. Basically, it's right there. If you go to the left in this view, you can even see it here. It falls off fairly steeply, very quickly. And then it goes down to a floodplain. So that would flood on a regular basis. So you would have to either grade, get a bulldozer or some equipment in there to regrade that, or put the trail in the floodway, realizing it will flood sometimes. So just because it was a little tricky, it wasn't an easy method of going, we said, okay, let's just test this other idea. We walked it where it was easy to walk, and we weren't in active farm fields, we put a line.
And Peter, it would involve boardwalk.
Yeah, so I know there's some thought about having boardwalks, which are really exciting, but having 400, 500, 600, 1,000 feet of boardwalk for functional reasons and not for educational reasons is quite an expense. Yeah,
So why wouldn't we want to just take the approach of like blazing a trail? Like, I mean, this seems like more of a hiking trail than a flat walking trail. Or is that an option?
Yeah, I think, well, I think from the beginning, we were thinking these wooded areas would be more of the hiking, walking trails.
Yeah.
yeah. So what about ADA? We had in our notes, the trails would want to be ADA, but that
Well,
could
I
be a
think we
mistake
have
on our part.
two spots too. We have in the public access spot, we've got the nice flat areas, and I do want to go back to that at some point because I like the idea of having the two loops because it gives seniors, people with kids, a smaller option instead of walking half a mile.
Yeah.
But those, I think we want that to be more, it's educational,
Yeah.
more all public, like you put it. Something like this, there's woods. I mean, we have trails in parks in town that are more hiking parks that aren't ADA.
Yeah.
Dividend, Quarry Park. There's certainly not ADA, and people like them. And it offers another look too.
Yeah.
So as long as the site represents that somewhere, I think we're probably covered. This seems like it's a little bit more off-road, I guess, which
Yeah.
might give us more options. You know, depending on how big of a flood you're talking with a floodplain, you know, that's also something that we might want to take into account. But I don't know that we would need to do all that like site work,
Right.
25-foot wide path for this type of thing. And it could give us more options.
Yeah, I mean, we were assuming ADA or close to ADA. That could have been a bad assumption on our part. It would be a lot more fun for us to lay out a path that would be more hiking than flat access. So with that direction, we'd be happy to go back in there and do another alternative.
Peter, we're just messing with you. We just want to keep you coming back and forth.
Yeah, we do have to rework the trails, I think, and hiking trails
Yeah.
is what we're looking for, so.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, certainly not as close to the actual farmland.
right.
You know, I don't want someone to, hey, there's no barrier between this trail and whatever they're growing up there, green bean, one of the farmers green beans, I think.
Yep.
And just start walking through there, or you know, people are gonna go walk with their animals.
Yeah,
Not everyone's smart enough to have their dog on a leash.
right.
Dog run into the field, that's a bigger problem for the farmers, so.
You did see my dog out here, my wild beast dog.
I was, just saying, I know
Yeah.
that
Oh,
was
yeah.
an issue, I think, down at the Meadows,
It was, yeah.
so.
Right.
Off leash.
Yeah, all right, so that sounds good. Now, the
Can't say you can do anything.
the potential trailhead at V3 in V13, there is, I'm not sure if it's an official wetlands that goes right along this whole edge. It looks like it's probably wetlands, probably a drainage way at one time, farmer's drainage way. But that would, I guess if the parking was done in the right-of-way, that 15-foot right-of-way, then you could just have some sort of wood boardwalk across that. If the parking was going to happen outside that right-of-way, I think there's some significant limitations.
Town road.
Yeah. Okay.
Good.
So it seems to me that we'll go back out, walk this, more of a trail sort of attitude. And then as far as the alternatives, 1 and 2 for the other property, Mr. Chair, I don't know if you want to put together a series of comments and send them to us or overlay that work.
Well, we'll put some comments together, because we're going to hear from public now a little
Yeah.
bit. This is not a public hearing, but we're going to get comments from the public,
Yeah,
so
okay?
And then if you have comments, you can send them to me and I'll send them off to Peter.
we'll all email Ray
Yeah,
in the next 24 hours, 36 hours, and 48 hours, and give him some comments to get back to you.
yeah,
Perfect.
and if that works,
No discussion amongst any of you. Just
Nope.
comment, yeah, just-
We cannot,
FOI.
What is
Yeah.
email box?
no, awesome.
no.
That works for everybody on the
I
committee?
showed it on the map.
All right.
Was there anything more that he'd wanted to show before we take the comments from the public?
You're all set, Pete?
Yeah, just one thing, if we get those comments within 2 weeks, gives us 2 weeks to turn them around, we could come to your next meeting if we're invited.
If?
So we need about 2 weeks to turn it around.
Okay.
Okay?
Great.
All
So
right,
with that, I'm going to entertain a motion to add
you.
public comment.
Thank you.
Second. Oh,
I'll make a motion to add a second public comment as item, we're calling it.
Why don't we do it, why don't we let
Or-
Ray update you on the Straska property, then make it
All right, so we'll make it
5B?
item 5A
Okay.
after
Yep.
Town Farm, Straska property abatement and demolition update.
7A.
Yep. Perfect. Do I have a second?
7A, sorry, I was cribbing off your agenda.
5A.
That's last month. Oh, no, wait.
Making the motion?
This is-
5A.
That's last month. This is, you're right.
Okay,
You got it, 5A.
all right.
Do we make the motion?
Yeah, I'll restate it. I'll make a motion to add a second public comment as item 5A after Town, my glasses aren't good, Town Farm, Straska property abatement and demolition update.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay, great. So now, comment from the public. If anybody would like to come to the podium for 2 minutes to express their ideas.
I thought we were listening to,
Town
First of
farm
all-
first.
I thought Ray was going to.
Oh,
Ray's
I'm
going
sorry.
first.
Oops, no.
Could you remain at the podium for 1 second?
I think so.
We're getting an introduction for you.
Does this count as my time?
No,
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 no.
you're done.
No,
There's no update.
All that.
Yeah, just a quick update. The abatement demolition project was put out to bid. The deadline is May 4th for bids to be submitted. We had 21 separate contractors come out to take a look at the mandated pre-bid site inspection. We added a couple of items via addendum that were a result of some questions by the contractors, and those were posted. So now we just wait until the 4th. On the 4th, the bids get open. We have to go through a process whereby we have to rank the contract bids and then send them off to DECD so they can, Department of Economic and Community Development, so they can review and approve. And then we will pick a contractor and have the town council hopefully approve the contract. So that should take hopefully maybe to the end of May.
Yeah, most likely award a bid sometime in June.
Early June, so we can get phase 2
'Cause
under control.
You got an early 2 Mondays, plus the second Monday in May is budget adoption night. So I'd recommend shooting for the first meeting in June, if possible, if we can get it back from the state in time.
Okay.
So the state could muck up our raise predicted dates.
Just so you know, this document is a bid to demolish a house. This inch-thick document, just to take down a house. Because of its state grant money, public money, we have to be accountable for every penny in every process.
Any comments of staff?
No.
All right.
Good.
Thank you for waiting.
Okay. First of all, I would like to thank our team from Yukon because I think they did an amazing job.
Name and address.
Oh, right. I'm still Justine Bedlack, still Murphy Drive, Rocky Hill, Connecticut. I really think I like their ideas, and I think they put a lot of time and thought into it. And I just have one quick question. Is there any plan for a public toilet anywhere? Yes? Okay, because I just didn't see that.
In the program statement, I mentioned a prefab barn. We talked about porta toilets for now.
Okay.
But maybe
Okay.
in the future,
Okay, porta toilets
a
are fine.
long way down the road.
Okay, that's perfect.
So we-
Okay,
we-
I didn't- I
so we
somehow
believe-
didn't-
We believe local contractors have a vested interest in this site, and we may be able to have some utilities right from the start, but all those things have to be worked out.
Okay.
And then, this is my first public meeting, and I've introduced myself, but I don't know who anybody is.
We don't have our nameplates.
We don't have our nameplates out.
No nameplates.
I mean,
no.
I don't know.
Normally, we don't have people that attend the meetings.
This is a pretty popular.
I think you should have people go around for the sake of the public. I think that would be
Sure.
appropriate.
For tonight's meeting, we're gonna start out, and we'll introduce ourselves, starting with Dan.
I'm Dan, and I'm the assistant to the town manager.
He takes the notes of the meeting.
Brian Clemens.
Brian represents public comment on the commission.
Fran Whalen, I'm a commissioner on here.
He's a commissioner on another committee, so we address him by commissioner, but he also represents the public and the farming community.
John Malero, Town Council.
Town council,
I'm sorry, what did you say your name was? I didn't catch
John Malero.
that. I didn't know that, okay. I do a little seating plan, I put all your names on the seat.
we have on the far end,
John Mayer, the town manager.
Is that it?
Yep. I don't know if Ed's gonna has a sidebar about me.
his title speaks for himself. He is the town manager.
Ray Carpentino, Economic Development Director.
Ray writes the.
Sandy Kelly, I'm a commissioner.
She sits on Open Space and
And I'm a
Wetlands
member of
Commission,
the
so we
Open
call her by commissioner, but she also represents the public on this committee.
Chris Duff, Town Council.
Thank you, Chris. I'm chair, and I'm also on town council.
And your name is?
Ed Sharmut.
Deputy Mayor.
So Ray and I are part of what we call the farm division
Yes.
of the
Farm
town.
division,
So
yes.
we're a self-appointed department of the town council, unofficially recognized.
We have vests, say Town Farm Division.
Any other public comment? Please.
Hello, I'm Alicia Cornelio again, 327 Whitewood Drive. I just have two impressions. One is the idea of the strawberries. I don't know who came up with this idea. I don't know if it's going to a lot of pesticides in order to look good. They're one of the dirtiest fruits, actually. Not very sustainable. I would suggest, and I could do some research, maybe something else that you would like to grow as a fruit, or maybe something that's not a fruit to put in that area that would be more sustainable and maybe require less pesticides to grow. My second thing is the pedestrian trails, and I know this is a huge compromise to the farmers, but perhaps if, they're very concerned about people walking and accessing their fields, and I completely understand that. So maybe if they reduced their acreage there, so that they were farther away from these trails, that would reduce the problems of, each group getting in its way. Maybe if you even got rid of one field altogether and had those trails just in one area only instead of traversing through all of the farmers' fields, that might be something you would consider, so that there is no interference and no future trouble down the road. So that's just my suggestion.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other public comment?
At Chickarello, 40 Riverview Road. Quite exciting to see this opportunity coming to fruition. So thank you for all your work that you're doing, and thank you for your presentation. It's exciting to sit there, really is. One of the questions I wanted to ask was, I didn't hear a word about the farmer's market, and maybe I missed a meeting. I know I missed the meeting, but is the farmer's market totally out now? So, is it? Oh, it is.
No.
Yeah.
We'll clarify that
Okay.
in a minute. It's
Yeah.
off
But it-
of our top priority list, but it's still part of the plan.
My question is for the pedestrian surface. You had a pedestrian walk, great, love it. What is that surface? Is it crushed stone? Is it gravel? Impervious, I would hope, or pervious. Pervious, I would hope. My concern with that road that goes west to east is that when we saw the pedestrian path go down and around, and then when it came up to the north, the pedestrians and the cars shared the road. That's no good. Can't do that. We got to figure out a way to have the road, the cars, and the pedestrians mutually,
Eddie, you're
exclusive.
talking about the road within the Straska farm that
Yeah.
went with the dotted lines?
Yeah.
You're not talking about New Britain Avenue?
No,
Yeah, okay.
no, that road within the farm. Yes, thank you, John.
Yeah.
The community garden came up many, many times, a lot of emphasis on it, and I just want to put this out there. I want to know who's going to manage it. Who is the manager? We need one person that's going to manage it. I don't think Ray over there is going to do it. That's my opinion.
No, I go to Stop and Shop.
Yeah, but you know what? It's a very, very, very important answer. ADA compliant trails, I don't know what those are. I'd like to know what they are specifically. And then the trails, you know, I've been involved in making and blazing and making maps for all the trails in town. So I would offer to walk that. I would say have at Chickarell the Rocky Hill Hiker Walk with Fran the farmer, and I'd be happy to, and maybe even Sandy Kelly or somebody else if you want it. You know, I'd be happy to join you just to, you know, because all I'm seeing is I haven't walked the property yet, you know, so I would love to do that and then get Fran's best opinion to say, okay, you know what? But I got to be honest with you. After I heard that there's pesticides that are being sprayed every 10 days, I won't be walking there.
Great. Any other comments from the public at this time? All right, seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I have a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I will second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much.